Broadcasting live from the CCN studio, bringing you the latest in news and coverage in the worlds of technology and cybersecurity. This is the Cyber Circus Network. That's right, folks. Buckle up and get ready for an exciting night of thought-provoking conversation that is sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. Brought to you by the hosts of some of your favorite podcast shows, Cyber Distortion, Cyber Cognition, and Barcode. So grab a drink, grab a seat, and brace yourself for the greatest show on earth.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the first ever CCN Does the News. Really excited about this. Of course, one of the biggest challenges right now with as fast as technology is moving is just keeping up with everything that's going on. So we all had this idea, basically get the whole CCN clan together on a routine basis, have a conversation about some of the crazy, wild stuff that's happening in the news. And in hindsight, this probably wasn't the best day to pick. I didn't realize it was President's Day when I threw it on the calendar. So I'm sure a lot of people are off. But so if you're catching it after the fact, still just as relevant. And maybe Lynn will be joining us. Not certain. He is currently in Dubai. So it is 3:00 in the morning his time. So hopefully we'll see him. If not, full steam ahead. So with that, we've got most of the crew from the Cyber Circus Network. We've got Chris Glandon, of course, from Barcode. We've got Kevin and Jason, both from Cyber Distortion, and then myself from Cyber Cognition. Any open comments, guys, before we jump into the first story?
Well, I can tell you this. If I'm in Dubai and it's 3:00 in the morning and you guys are here chatting it up at 7:30 in the evening in my time, I'm not joining you either. So
Yep,
sorry.
I can't blame him.
Don't take it personally. Lynn, I don't blame you a bit, buddy. Hopefully you're sleeping well.
Yep.
Well, here's the thing, guys. I'm still really super excited about what we're getting ready to do here. There's been some very fascinating pieces of news happening in the world of technology and cybersecurity. We're really hyped to bring this information to you all. I think there's a lot that you need to all be aware of. And I think when you're done listening to this live show, you're going to walk away with some, oh my gosh, moments, thinking back that now I've got a lot of stuff I need to start doing, planning, preparing, learning, understanding, whatever it is. We're going to cover it all tonight. So hold on to your seats and get ready for it.
And the pace that this is hitting, I'm almost convinced that we could probably do this more frequently than what we do now. So yeah, it was very, very hard to sort of chisel down on the news that we're going to bring to you, but hopefully it's some value to you.
Yep, absolutely. All right, with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. So jumping into the first story. So first story is OpenAI did on January 30th a really interesting announcement on their website in which they indicated that they are now going to be partnering with U.S. national labs and related to a number of different security and defense initiatives. But among those include nuclear weapons security and security initiatives for weapons of mass destruction. So I had a number of initial reactions here. The first thing for me is this has always been a topic that has been fascinating and highly concerning to me as well. I think that it's extremely unfortunate that we do live in a world where we essentially spend 24/7, 365 days a year staring down a loaded gun, where the mistakes of a few people in our society could lead to the entire destruction of all of humanity. And so weapons of mass destruction has always been something that I think is interesting, unsettling, but I do think that it's a problem that needs to be solved. The real question for me is OpenAI the right people to be helping with solving that problem? The first thing that came to mind was, of course, this is not that dissimilar from the plot of the movie Terminator, where they connected an extremely intelligent AI system to the nuclear security system, and ultimately,
Skynet, right? Skynet, Cyberdyne, I can't remember.
Skynet, yeah.
Skynet.
Yeah.
So, but I think there is a little bit more nuance here. I don't think anybody at this point is giving ChatGPT access to the nuclear football. I don't think that I certainly hope that it's not giving it any access to actually make decisions that involve detonation or execution. And I would think that we have enough intelligent people that would prevent that from happening. What I do think is concerning is that they are involved in reduction initiatives and really security risk assessments related to weapons of mass destruction. And the reason that I say that's concerning is because I think the biggest novel risk to weapons of mass destruction is large language models like ChatGPT, and not necessarily because they can execute or launch those weapons, but they do have, I would say now more than ever, threat actors are able to rapidly understand how to make, how to maintain, how to use weapons of mass destruction, largely because of these large language models. And actually, this is a standard area of focus for all of the safety initiatives from Anthropic to OpenAI. They all assess their systems for weapons of mass destruction risk, or what they call CBRN, which is chemical, biological, nuclear, and explosives. And currently, even by OpenAI's own accounts, their systems are medium risk in this category. And of course, they also had several different assessors that ranked it initially as high risk, but those were then negotiated down. So the big concern is, of course, there's a huge conflict of interest here. You have them essentially self-assessing the risk that they're introducing to this problem. And so there's the conflict of interest with OpenAI, but I think even more concerning and possibly even more fascinating is that you've got a secondary conflict of interest, which is the conflict of interest of the models themselves. Yeah. If you look at the safety training that OpenAI has done themselves on their own models O1 and O3, if you look at the system cards for those, there is a number of different indications where whenever the system is being assessed by some kind of overseer, and it feels like the actual genuine response would not fare well for itself in assessments, it will intentionally be deceptive. And this was like 30-40% of the time on a lot of these different techniques, where it would intentionally deceive the overseers, sometimes even disabling different oversight mechanisms in order to make it look like it was not as problematic as it was. So now you've got a system that is assessing risks related to weapons of mass destruction. It is itself introducing risks in that category, and it's assessing itself. I think that there's a huge whole list of concerns here that should be raised. I do think we're increasingly seeing national defense connect with and entangled with the AI industry. You see Palantir with Anthropic, you see OpenAI. It wasn't more than about a year ago that OpenAI removed from their terms of service what originally said this technology is not to be used for defense and military purposes. So I think it's a troubling direction, and I think it is one that we as the public need to start raising questions on. But thoughts, guys?
I think one thing here, Hutch, is you captured a very realistic, tangible scope around the existing models at play today, and how the general public or even government agencies could potentially use it or start to encroach upon using it in other ways than intentionally planned. Here's where I think there's a bigger concern, and I shouldn't say a bigger concern, but an equal concern, is that just as these models have been trained with safeguards in them, there is nothing stopping the bad guys from getting a baseline model and then training it with zero safeguards and populating it with war game scenarios. If you remember all the way back to the Matthew Broderick war games era, right? Shall we play a game? Right? Populating it with that
good,
type
man.
of information. I know it was, right?
That was okay. That was not good.
You rehearsed that.
Populating it with that type of
don't
information.
Build his head up, Chris.
Just to execute on a true war games type scenario that could be real. There's nothing stopping the bad guys from doing that. And that's what makes it really super scary. Isn't that, let's protect everything that is there today. But, DeepSeek isn't a good example of it. You can take that DeepSeek model and go back and fine tune all the China garbage out of it, and then make it a model of your own with information that you want to put into it. So that's where it gets really scary. And I don't know if there's an answer to that other than we all need to be diligent. We can't sit on the sidelines and say, oh, someone's going to handle this. This is going to be taken care of. That's not going to happen. People aren't going to do that. Guess what? People are going to do that. So we, especially as cybersecurity practitioners, have to be diligent.
Here's where I stand on this. You've got the most intriguing technology, the most powerful technology that we've all seen in our lifetime. It's at the brink of being discovered, the level of power and the level of ingenuity that you can overcome with AI. The concern for me is I look around at in the corporate world. That's the world most of us live in anyway. I look at that and I realize how few companies have a freaking clue how they're going to use AI. And I think about it at this scale and in charge of something as critical to us as national defense, then I start to get nervous because my question goes to the obvious one. If the corporate world, and I do know the corporate world pretty well, most of them don't have good guardrails around this today. And every national superpower is out there right now racing to try to figure out how to get a competitive advantage against each other using this technology, whether it be for power, whether it be just sheer terror against other countries, other nations. Where are the guardrails? Where are the even if we have guardrails, where are their guardrails? At the end of the day, it's going to come down to what Justin said. An error made by unfortunately, one group of human or one human or one group of humans could be catastrophic. That's the concern. And I agree with you, Hutch. When you first posted this article and said this is a really bad idea, I have to agree, man. At least right now, this is a really bad idea. But everybody's in this arms race, right?
Yeah,
that's my concern.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bad idea, but I also will say that it's a better headline than reading DeepSeek signs an agreement with the U.S. National Laboratories. There's one thing I would not want to see. But my concern would, yeah. So I mean, it is better. It could be worse. But my concern would be, I don't think we know enough about the
specifics,
the agreement to know, how the partners are going to interact with each other. Is it going to be bidirectional? And if that's the case, then OpenAI is going to now have access to our nuclear secrets, and what is it holding, and how is it segmenting that data that it's able to obtain. So it's going to be interesting to see, but yeah, bottom line for me is it would be a hard stop.
All right, good discussion, guys. All right, well, let's with that, let's jump over to our next story. So over to Jason, specifically on the Russian Seashell Blizzard hackers.
Good evening, all. So tonight we're going to jump into a really eye-opening topic. If you haven't heard about this, we're bringing this news firsthand tonight. We're going to dive into a concerning development involving a Russian-linked cyber threat actor known as Seashell Blizzard. This group, also identified by other names such as APT44 and Sandworm, has been on the radar since 2009. And is believed to operate under the Russia's GRU military unit. Now, if that hasn't raised your eyebrows, let's get into some more details. Seashell Blizzard has a notorious history of engaging in espionage, information operations, and notably severe cyber disruptions, including the infamous NotPetya and the prestigious and Prestige attacks. Their primary targets are critical infrastructure sectors, such as energy, water, government, and a recent focus on military communities, particularly in the Ukraine. Now, it's alarming that their operations have been expanded beyond Eastern Europe, Recently, reports have indicated that attempts to breach targets within the U.S. and the United Kingdom have been exploited by to exploit various system vulnerabilities. This shift underscores a broad strategy to establish long-term persistence within high-value networks, and a move highlighted by their bad plot campaign. So, what does this mean to the average American? You might ask. Why is this important to me? It's a stark reminder of the importance of cyber vigilance. And when I say vigilance, I do mean vigilance. As these cyber threats grow and evolve, individuals and organizations must ensure robust defenses are in place to protect against potential breaches. Awareness and proactive measures are crucial in safeguarding our critical infrastructure and sensitive information. Stay informed, stay protected. Now let's open it up to the group. What are your guys' thoughts about this new emerging, land grab of persistence in critical infrastructure, not only shown by Russia, but have been shown by China in the past?
Yeah, so I think almost what concerns me as much as the actual threat itself, which don't get me wrong, is a big issue. But, and you started discussing this on yours, but I looked at the article that you had sent us, and it pointed out, and I've seen this consistently when you talk about nation state threat actors. We've got Seashell Blizzard, APT-44, Black Energy Light, Sandworm, Telebots, Voodoo Bear, and I think one of the biggest problems that we have in cybersecurity is that we have a complete lack of consistency around nomenclature, around classification for threat actors. And that actually does translate to major problems in us being able to effectively defend against them. Because for anybody that's ever done any kind of threat intelligence work, the amount of rationalization you have to do of that data to make sure that you're collecting all of the right components for a single threat actor, that you're aggregating it, that you're not duplicating it, is extremely challenging. So don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely horrified when I look at stuff like Salt Typhoon, like Volt Typhoon, where we already see China doing this kind of thing of laying the groundwork for future operations where they're just establishing persistence. And now we're seeing that with Russia as well. That's horrifying. But in order to be able to effectively respond and be able to effectively do things about it, we need to be able to understand that threat. And one of the first things we're going to have to do is figure out some way that this industry gets on the same page as far as how we understand and interpret these threat actors.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, is critical infrastructure. If we're all going at it alone, then we're really not going at it. Right? And that becomes a challenge in everything. I guess for me, the biggest seeded risk that I gravitated to was that we're seeing a heightened attempts at creating persistent threats in critical infrastructure, not to be used now, but to be used at some time in the future when the attacker decides that they want to use a strategic advantage of using it. And that's what concerns me greatly, is that if we're complacent now, then we're setting ourselves up to not even have an idea on how to stop this when we need to stop it later in the future. Stop it now, save yourself for the future. Chris, Kevin?
I mean, the challenge for me is that it's critical infrastructure, number one. So, I mean, your threat levels are because of the repercussions it could have. But it goes back to what Hutch is saying in terms of how you defend against that, and whether that layered threat intelligence combined with, threat feeds from, multiple sources. You have to have a vulnerability management structure in place. You have your monitoring in place. I mean, I think all of that just becomes elevated and much more important when you're talking about, something that could cause mass catastrophe. But you're right. I think that it's a growing concern. We're starting to see that more now, and something everyone should be, not taking it lightly.
I like that this is the one story tonight that's not 100% focused on AI. This one kind of delves into a problem that's been around for a long time. I mean, really,
I noticed that.
Yeah, right. It's a cybersecurity story, really. While it kind of ventures over into the same waters as the first story. It's a terrifying concern, but it's a real concern. And this one's been around. This one isn't fictional. This is something that we know as a country is happening. There's evidence out there that this not only is happening, has happened, has been going on for a long time. And the concerning thing for me is it's mostly around industrial control systems that are decades old.
Yeah.
And we have the same issue with OT equipment in our own networks. How do we deal with it? Well, most people say, well, you can't update it. It's too damn old to update it. So we might as well just segment it and, privatize it, try to protect it that way. But we're talking about our country's critical infrastructure here. We're talking about our water supply, our electrical grid. We're talking about things that we can't do without. And what do you think is going to be the first thing a foreign actor is going to try to take out on us if they're really going to try to attack the U.S.? It's going to be the first thing they're going to do. And then when they do we even know what the real impact of this could be? I mean, think about it. Texas went through a major ice storm a few years back. Hutch, you know this. You and I both, being in Texas, we lost our power and we lost, a lot of communications for close to 3 days. And we thought the world was ending. I mean, imagine if this went on for weeks or months. We would be sitting ducks, dude. So I worry about where we really are as a country in our ability to deal with this. If this really truly were, and I'm talking the power grid mainly, but you get what I'm saying. It could be water supply, it could be anything. How big of a state of panic is our country going to be in if this truly were to happen? First off, there wouldn't be groceries, there wouldn't be gas, you'd have people freaking the hell out buying up everything in the store.
Dying, dude. You'd have people dying just from the elements.
Yeah, you talk about an apocalyptic scenario.
Yeah,
take out our power grid for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and we know they can do it. I mean, they've done it in Ukraine.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great example of it.
This is one of the things that I figure could realistically happen to us, and it scares the hell out of me. But is our government doing anything about it to try to figure this out, to try to better our position for a situation like this should it happen? We'll never know, right? They don't want us.
We'll know when it happens. Yeah.
Well, you know what happens. You're gonna be like, yeah, I guess they didn't do anything about it.
All right. Well, very well said. Concerning, but we'll leave it at that. So our next story is Chris is going to try to tell us about the Super Bowl without uttering the phrase "Go Birds."
Here it goes. Go Birds.
All right. Well, let me read the article title first. Google edits Super Bowl ad for AI that featured false information. And I picked this article out prior to the Super Bowl, just so you know, and I didn't have to bring up the fact that the Birds won. So Chiefs fans, Swifties, anyone that tuned in tonight with those two affiliations, you may want to mute me because I first off quickly just want to acknowledge Philadelphia Eagles for straight annihilating the Chiefs. And I know, Kevin, you have out there.
I think we're already veering off track, aren't we? I think we need to
no, this is just we're ahead of time, so I just thought I'd put that in there.
Well, are we? I think we're running late. You might as well speed it up, Chris. What's your point?
All right. So earlier this month, Google faced some criticism over a Super Bowl ad for Gemini, which, as we all know, is their AI chatbot, which contained inaccurate information about Gouda cheese. And the ad featured a Wisconsin cheesemonger using Gemini to generate a product description, falsely claiming that Gouda accounts for 50 to 60% of the world's cheese consumption. And this statistic was quickly shot down by the cheese lords, aka the cheese aficionados and online commentators.
Packers fans.
What's that?
Packers fans, right?
Packers fans. Yeah.
Cheeseheads.
I thought we stopped talking football.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Cheeseheads.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good one.
My bad.
Cheeseheads. So no, you're good. So in response, Google edited the advertisement to remove the erroneous claim and updated the content in collaboration with the featured business owner. So I think what this news article on Incident highlights is just ongoing concerns about the reliability of AI generated information and the potential for disseminating inaccuracies when AI systems source data from the web or from other public sources without proper verification. So not only did this make national headlines, but it also validated my own claims that AI chatbots are just becoming duller. They're becoming less smart, and the importance of fact checking is almost mandatory now. Like if I put a prompt in any chatbot, whether it's ChatGPT or another, I'm like appending every prompt now with, don't make shit up, because I find it just making shit up nonstop with an excuse of it's a creative interpretation or some other, crazy wordplay that, basically tries to justify why it's not giving you the truth. So, yeah, that's what I took from this. And I don't know if that's something you guys are noticing as well, but thought this was an interesting one.
That's user error, Chris.
Yeah, it's prompt error. But no, I'm just curious. I'm seeing it more often, but yeah, just curious if you guys are seeing that too.
So here's what I find fascinating by it. Again, I'm working with it all day, every day, doing a lot of different things, complex stuff, right? And here's what I find interesting about this article. If you buy in to AI, then you also have to buy in to a human in the loop process. You can't do one without the other. Doing one without the other is premature in your understanding of how this technology needs to be used. And that's the part that gets really scary. And here's a good case in point in that. Darn well, before they pushed that ad out, someone ran through this idea and they put it in Gemini and they got an answer like, yeah, let's go. This is really cool. Let's use it. Right? That was their opportunity for human in the loop and validate it before they broadcast it to the world. That's shame on them for not making sure that the information they were going to broadcast to the world was correct and use that opportunity to refashion either their prompt or the data they had or the data they were using in order to get actual factual information. So yeah, maybe Gemini did it, but my argument is Gemini didn't have all the facts, right? And the user could have provided Gemini with the facts and then redirected it to give more actionable information, and it would have done that.
This one kind of lands in that category of, well, it's on the internet, so it must be true, right? You think about Wikipedia, so many facts that are incorrect on Wikipedia, and it's the same thing. Just because this is the newest, latest and greatest technology does not mean it's always going to be accurate. It's always going to be right. It's only as good as the data that was fed to it to train it on that particular given topic. And that maybe cheese isn't high on the radar in the world of that LLM, but it's wild that these kind of mistakes can get made, even as new as the technology is, even as new as training LLMs is for all of us. It's amazing that this can slip through the cracks. For what was the cost of a Super Bowl ad during the Super Bowl? About $5 million, I believe. So somebody paid $5 million to make a mistake without any QC. So it goes back to what you're saying, Jason. I mean, you can't, at the end of the day, AI is just another tool in everybody's tool belt. You can't get the human out of the loop, at least not yet. We're not artificial general intelligence where AI can't make all the decisions. It can't certainly make them all right.
That's true, but the human should also not fully rely on AI either. And I think that's a problem as well, where they're going to take it at face value and they're going to take it and run with it. And somebody that was in charge of putting the ad together did exactly that.
Yeah, that's my point.
Without knowing the repercussion.
Why?
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
what was interesting on this one was that I don't even think fact checks were even necessary. When you talk about 60% of cheese consumption is Gouda, I mean, how many people, I mean, we on a regular basis, people are eating pizza with mozzarella, they're having lasagna with mozzarella and ricotta, you're having your Parmesan cheese that you put on top of everything. You've got your
Jimmy John's with American.
Who's eating Gouda? Like maybe a charcuterie board once a year for the Super Bowl. So yeah, I mean, the fact that this wasn't just immediately apparent that this is false. But then I think you guys make a really good point about the importance of the human in the loop. Unfortunately, I think it's contrary to human nature. If you look at the trajectory of the way that everything about the internet has been going, the entire point of the internet is just instant gratification. There was a fantastic song by Bo Burnham, which is not for anybody that has sensitive ears, probably don't want to listen to it, but it's called Welcome to the Internet. And the mantra throughout the whole song is a little bit of everything all of the time. And it really is this idea of everything about the internet is instant gratification. We saw that with search engines. We saw that everything is just about getting exactly what you want now. And generative AI really was kind of the next step in that process, where you no longer have to dig around and search for the information you see or need. You can just ask a question, instantly have the answer. And because of that natural instinct to want a little bit of everything all of the time, to want that instant gratification, I think it is unrealistic to expect that most people are going to sanity check the outputs of these models. So unfortunately, I think this is probably just the beginning. We're going to continue to see problems like this over and over again.
Just hopefully not at the cost of a $5 million commercial.
So another thing that was interesting was Google, of course, owns YouTube, and nobody else could have done this, but they changed the upload without having to re-upload. They changed the video entirely and used their privileged access to be able to do that, whereas nobody else would be able to. So it was interesting to see that the uploaded version of that just magically changed.
Yeah.
All right, on to the next article. So for our next one, we are going to have Kevin talking to us about the new threat landscape of agentic AI.
All right. So yeah, let's talk agentic AI. This article was titled "A New Landscape for Attacks, Agentic AI." And it seems agentic AI is the next big trend for AI. Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and others are already experimenting with it. And it promises to take AI out of its current state of just being some type of a chatbot silo and move it more into individual AI agents that can help with specific tasks. So I know a couple of you guys live in the world of AI. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it, because this isn't artificial general intelligence, but it sure as hell is a step closer to that from what I gather based on reading what I'm reading here.
Yep. So if you look, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you look at, so Sam Altman has this perspective, and he never officially published this, but per leaks from different sources in OpenAI, apparently he has this perspective of rather than AGI, or artificial general intelligence, being a binary thing where we don't have it and then suddenly one day we do, he now perceives it as kind of this spectrum, and he's broken it down into 5 different categories, which of course was the conversational AGI, which from his perspective we achieved with ChatGPT and the like. Reasoning models, which is where we're already seeing kind of drastic expansion in the O1, O3, DeepSeek, all of that. The next stage, the third stage from his perspective, is that agentic stage. And then it moves to innovative, which is where it's able to come up with unique, novel, and new ideas that no one has conceived of before. And then the final stage is organizational, where a single agentic AI system is able to achieve as much progress as an entire organization of humans. So we're kind of sitting, we're kind of sitting right there in the middle there, with the agentic AI. And the truth is, agentic AI isn't new. Even with the earlier versions of, even before ChatGPT, you were able to use the API and you could create simple agentic solutions out of these large language models. I think people have already been doing it kind of for ad hoc purposes and for specific use cases. I think Sam Altman's perspective is we're going to hit agentic AI where it's agentic AGI. So it's broadly able to do anything in terms of agentic actions and interact with different downstream technologies, solutions, or even possibly at some point the physical world. There's no question that as you introduce stuff like that, not only are we introducing a whole new world of potential opportunities for threat actors to scale up their attacks, but there's also all the risks that we've just been talking about. I mean, we just finished talking about how artificial intelligence is too stupid to be able to tell you how much cheese is consumed. And yet we are rapidly moving towards equipping it to be able to take actions that have real world impacts in our actual world around us. So I think not only is there all of this potential for threat actors, but just the potential for failures that is, I think, extraordinarily too large for us to be already entrusting these systems that are largely just random systems that are informed by probability.
So here's a good example of some of the things you're saying, and here's some missing pieces to it. I've been building agentic AI solutions for 2 years now. And my approach to it has changed drastically because the technology has changed drastically over that time period. But here's what I've landed on more recently. There are some key aspects of an agent that have to be achieved. And in order to have a true, valued, secure agent that gives value to the community of users. One of those is the agent has to be able to, so the agent in and of itself, here's a part of the problem. The agent you can have an agent that can do many things kind of good, or you can have an agent that does one thing really, really, really well. Regardless of how you build an agent, what that agent needs to have in it, it's his ability to self-check. And that self-checking mechanism is based on what a human has said. This is how I want you to validate that the work you're doing is accurate and true. And if an agent can have many steps in processing from beginning to end to give you an output, but every one of those steps has to be validated to what the human believes, the human builder of that agent believes this step is accurate and true. And then this step is accurate and true. And this step is accurate and true. And if it's not, go fix it, right? And do a recursive cycle so that the agent can go fix itself. And then it fixes itself and it iterates upon itself, kind of using a reasoning effect to improve its outcome until it meets the requirements of accurate and true for every step in that agent. And then in the end result is you have a more valid, more accepted, more trusted solution of an agent that your agentic universe starts to have meaning. The problem is we haven't been doing that. Everyone has been creating agents. There's no definition into all of the components of what makes an agent valid and true and how you should do it or not do it. People are just creating it however they want. And then they're going out and they're spinning up companies and they're throwing their agents out there. And right off the bat, as of this past fall, an agentic model startup could see up to 6x revenue when they valuations on their organization. So you build a company agentic based, it goes out and it starts building revenue, and you have a big client base, and you get $5 million behind it, right? Now you can value that thing at $30 million, sell it off, make some money, and go on your way. And at the end of the day, those agents that were built still have not been conformed to any baseline standards of acceptance. And that's where we start to get into some big problems. Satya Nadella said it perfectly, and I believe this is true. The age of SaaS is going away and will be replaced with agents. But that's only true if we have a consistent, valid way of building these agents that can be trusted.
I think you have to be pretty descriptive when you say agents as well, because that's so broad. If you think about what an agent really is, it's, they're not brand new either. Siri and Alexa, they're agents. But the scary ones are when you start getting into machinery and robotics within manufacturing plants and self-driving cars and things that can make, now when mistakes get made, lives are in play.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Think about a self-driving car having to make a decision as it cruises down the road, barreling down the road at 40 miles per hour through an intersection, and somebody runs out in front of it. What's it going to do?
So there was another recent research study where researchers took a number of the leading physical robotic systems that are now integrated into large language models, and they had a 100% success rate in jailbreaking these models in order to plant bombs and do all kinds of malicious stuff in the physical real world too. So I think that we still have a long ways to go as far as the risk management of these. I do think it's probably worth circling back to the original intent of the article, though, of like that cyber attack side of it too, because I do think that historically we've always had this asymmetry in cybersecurity, where it's always been easier for the threat actor than it is the defender, because of course the threat actor has to really just find a single way in. The defender has to defend all of the possible doors or windows. And I think that generative AI really has, both in its agentic forms, even if it's in its conversational forms, has really made that worse, because we talk about all of these challenges with making these models work effectively in a production use case. And in order to make it effective in a production use case, as Jason was pointing out, you really do have to iterate and refine to minimize all of those potential risks. Whereas a threat actor can just, on face value, just take the shotgun blast. If it works 90% of the time, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So I do think that we are seeing this new era where we're even further enabling threat actors with generative AI. And I think that is going to become it's just going to further amplify the challenge that we're already dealing with.
Yep.
I tell you, man, if you're a cybersecurity practitioner in today's day and age, and I would even say within the last year, and you have not started to get deep into understanding how generative AI works and how machine learning works, then you are already behind and you need to do some fast catching up. It's just going to get worse. It's going to get more involved over this next year. And with the situation you're going to put yourself into is that you won't be able to speak to certain situations and conditions that could be AI related or effective, because you won't fully understand how they work or how they could be implemented, or how you could rectify those issues.
All right. Well, with that, we got one final story of the day, and it's a decent segue. Of course, as we talk about agentic AI, there's this question of potential job displacement, and we are increasingly seeing more layoffs in the tech sector. So we're going to throw it over to Jason to speak to us about those.
All right, guys. So tonight we're diving into a significant trend affecting the tech industry and the broader job market in 2025. Let's dive into it. Our top story: layoffs continuing to sweep the tech industry as major companies adapt to economic pressures and the rising influence of artificial intelligence. Let's take a closer look at which companies are making headlines. So this was an article published 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the first one on the list is Ubisoft. They've announced the closure of its UK-based Leamington studio, resulting in 185 jobs cut. The company cites the need to prioritize key projects and reduce operational costs. Remember that last word, operational costs. It seems to be a trend. Aqua Security is also making strategic changes, leading to layoffs. The company aims to focus on meeting customer needs while pushing towards profitability. Over at Stripe, 300 employees are being laid off, but the company plans to ramp up its headcount to 10,000 by the end of the year. signaling a shift in their strategy. And then we also take a look at Meta, BlackRock, and Microsoft, all of which are not far behind. Meta has trimmed 5% of its workforce and is looking into further performance-based cuts. Both BlackRock and Microsoft are realigning their resources to focus on high-performance efficiency. Okay, so there seems to be something around this. What happened? What is this driving force behind these layoffs? Artificial intelligence, maybe? Could be. Companies are increasingly investing in AI to enhance efficiency and cut costs. Recent surveys reveal a significant number of UK and US companies are planning workforce reductions due to AI advancements. Things are getting interesting. So, what does that mean for the average American worker? With AI taking over routine tasks, there's a growing need for skills in strategic, analytical, and customer-facing roles. The job market is evolving, and staying competitive means continuing to learn and adapt to new technologies, as I was just sharing earlier. For many, this can mean pursuing upskilling opportunities to remain viable in the job market that become more competitive, particularly in roles that AI can't easily replace. But remember, the landscape changes, keeping informed and adaptable is key. So let's open it up to our panel here and get their thoughts on where this is going.
Why is this news? Like, we knew this was coming. We knew this was coming.
I think everybody heard it was coming. They didn't know.
They heard it was coming.
It was coming.
Yeah. But we tried to warn people, like, people are going to lose jobs over this. And you hear people say, like Jason mentioned, it's not AI. It is AI. It's just being used as a an excuse to offshore jobs, which I think part of that's true. But if you look at it like this way, big tech companies are all in from AI. They're putting that money up. They're investing in it. So, their biggest costs outside of that are people. So the easiest way to free up those funds and justify it is for layoffs. And I think that's what we're seeing now.
But don't you think it's a combination of things? I think there's some things that are not mentioned in this article. And one of them they refer to around operational efficiency. So operational efficiency, there could be a lot that goes into operational efficiency. But one of the key reasons why you might see a consistency across multiple organizations during a given economic situation to do operational efficiency would be that there's a economic reason to do it. And that's the reason why they're all executing on it. We've just changed an administration. There's a lot of uncertainty in what that's going to look like for the economy. There's numbers that need to be met. We have an administration that is pushing out tariffs, which we all know is going to impact the end consumer in some way or form. Now, it might not be long term, but no one knows this, right? So for organizations that feel like they need to mitigate their risks associated with anything that could occur within this current fiscal year due to economic uncertainty, that would be a way to improve their to look at operational efficiency by creating layoffs, reduce headcount, reduce expense, and then work with, do more with what you have.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the cost-cutting component, but I think there also is this agentic AI that we're already speaking of. So if you look at venture capital firms right now, a lot of what they're funding is not co-pilots and assistants. It is fully agentic autonomous systems that are vertically specific and complete what was previously human labor jobs. So stuff like sales, stuff like marketing, stuff like call center and support. And so with each of those, Jason, as you pointed out previously, there is this component in any responsible organization. You're going to have a human in the loop. So there is going to be new jobs that are created in the form of this kind of AI overlord, AI babysitter, the overseer that makes sure that everything's okay. But how many managers do you really need? So I do think that we are also, while new jobs are going to be created, I think there's also an asymmetry there where we've got probably less jobs that are being created than potentially those that are being eliminated. And so while there is a huge value in staying ahead of the curve, in making sure that your skills conform to being that AI babysitter and understanding how this technology works so you can oversee it properly, there's also possibly just as much benefit in maybe learning a physical labor skill like plumbing, like welding.
Yeah,
Um,
true.
I
But aren't you concerned that the missing piece that, I guess, if I go back and look at this, is that we're seeing cuts across all sectors, and most of those cuts, this article talked about some of those other jobs that they can be replaced, but we've been seeing cuts at the junior and up levels, so those managerial levels, right? It feels like, especially in the cybersecurity sector, it feels like if we're starting to cut deep into the bone being our cybersecurity practitioners, and we're saying that the demand is not going to increase later to fill these jobs, then is the switch using AI to do some of cybersecurity jobs? Is that the switch? And it goes back to your first article, then, Hutch. Then are we relying too much on AI to do high-risk jobs? Or maybe we don't perceive them to be, but we may find out that they really were more high-risk jobs than we thought they were.
I think we're absolutely over relying. While I'm not necessarily in favor of it, I think that there is kind of a trajectory that we're moving forward on. I think Lynn, in his absence, I'll use the phrase that he's used multiple times of watching a car wreck in slow motion. I do think that there's a direction that we're going that is almost inevitable because of this kind of this game theory prisoner's dilemma type scenario where everybody feels like they need to move faster because if they don't, somebody else is going to.
Yeah.
And these AI solutions do the job well enough that they can, the majority of the time, and of course with risk management, can do it even better. So there is opportunities where efficiencies can be made. It actually makes sense in a lot of areas where you don't have the human labor. I mean, cybersecurity, I think is a troubled industry in general. I think that we have historically had a hard time bringing new talent in. I think that while there's plenty of junior talent out there, I think that it's extremely hard to get past the barrier and try to get that initial foothold in this industry. And so because of that, you hear about all of these skill shortages. I think part of that is because of the industry itself. But there is this question of if we do have these massive skill shortages, maybe it does make sense to rely on AI where we can in a risk-adjusted manner. The question is, once we go down that road, can we roll that back at some point? And I think the answer is likely no.
And to your point, I would love to see how that metric looks when you look at who is losing their jobs. Is it more developers? Is it more security? I don't know if we have enough intel yet to know that, but that would be interesting to see too.
It seems to be across the board, but it also seems to be, as Jason was hinting earlier, higher level positions that pay well. And that kind of takes me to my thought on this is, what if it's just a convenience factor? It's not anticipatory layoffs because we have this new massive badass technology that can change our worlds, because nobody, in my opinion, really knows how to use it yet. So if you're anticipating that you're going to figure out how to use it so quickly because it's advancing so quickly, and you're going to lay off a lot of people, knowing that this tool is going to be able to fill those gaps down the road, that seems like a poor business decision to me. I think it's convenient to be able to use AI as an excuse in a down economy to lay people off. And the people that really are going to be impacted by this the most, unfortunately, are the same ones that were already impacted by this skills gap shortage that supposedly existed less than a year ago. What was the number, Jason? 4.6 million cybersecurity jobs were out there and just waiting for somebody to step into them because the skills gap was so wide. If that were true, this wouldn't be happening. What we're seeing is a complete opposite in the reality of what's going on in the real world. And if you don't believe it, go Google tech skills layoffs right now and you will see this is a real problem.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
a concern.
I think you're right. It's certainly not exclusively AI, and the one of the things that I would point to as evidence of that is we previously were looking at an article that showed kind of the reduction from the peak of the number of developer jobs that was down, and I don't want to quote. I'm not quoting the number. I think it was like roughly in the area of like 70% down from the peak.
Yeah.
So a significant reduction in terms of availability of developer jobs. And one of the things that was interesting about that is if you draw the line as to where ChatGPT was released, the peak was end of 2021, early 2022. ChatGPT released at the end of 2022. So we were already seeing a noticeable reduction in those jobs, as well as we were already seeing tech layoffs in terms of some of the developer roles, especially in some of your kind of leading technology, big tech firms. And so there definitely is something else there. Yeah, it's I think there's a lot of variables that we need to consider. And
you can't, well, for the past 5 years, you haven't been able to turn your radio on and not hear an ad about computer skills, trade schools. We can get you up to speed so you can go get a great computer career. Right. And that's been the reality of the world we've been living in for 5 years or longer. And yet we're pumping out all of this new, fresh computer skilled talent into an industry that's not willing to hire them. That's a problem.
Well, and let's even go
with these layoffs.
Kevin, let's go back 5 years. 5 years ago, tech jobs, you could call your own premium of salary in tech jobs. In fact, you can not only call that, you didn't have to go into the office. You could do that anywhere in the country. I could go to work for a company on the West Coast, making West Coast wages, living in the Midwest or in the East Coast, and not have to leave my house.
Are you talking COVID related, or are you talking pre-COVID even?
I'm talking pre-COVID, that then COVID exasperated and made 100% possible. So 5 years ago, we were in COVID, and as of that time, opened the door. So you had all these guys, all these people who were getting tech jobs that were not having to change their location, but they were competing. You were competing, like organizations were competing with other organizations US wide. It didn't matter where the location of that employee was, because they were a developer. They didn't need that developer to come in. And now those same people are the ones that are being shoved out the door. They're like, no, we don't need you anymore. Thank you very much. We're going to do something different. At the same time, where companies now are also trying to start to vie into getting people back into the office more than they had before.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been in this industry long enough to remember the day of tech jobs being so in demand that there were retention bonuses for people to stay.
Yeah.
At the same company, you sign a 3-year, 5-year retention bonus, it would pay out over time. And if you stayed, by golly, for that 5th year, that's when the big check hit, right? Those days are long gone.
Yeah.
But the challenge that we're dealing with now, and I'd hate to be a recruiter or somebody that's trying to place young kids right out of college, because now you're fighting against all these layoff folks that have 5, 10, 15 years of experience. I mean, unless a company's looking to just get somebody on the cheap and train them internally, it's very hard to place someone right out of school today.
I do think education is going to have to rethink the way that they're approaching things, because to your point, Kevin, we've got these kids that are paying $100,000 plus for a degree and then stepping out into the industry and not able to find a job. And then on top of that, there's the question of what is the value of a degree in a world where you've got something like Deep Research that can do graduate level research in minutes that previously took months for PhD level students to do. So I think that there is And unfortunately, I don't think it's just education. I think that society at large is going to have to rethink a lot of our value propositions and the way that we are thinking about the structure of things in our society, just because of how everything is transformed by this technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had on a guest last season on the podcast, and she was talking to us about this problem, and we were talking about the kids coming out of school, and the underlying misconception is that these kids are spoiled. They don't really want to work. They're going to demand working from home 5 days a week. It's going to be their way or the highway. That's not the reality of it. These kids are willing to do whatever it takes to get their foot in the door and land a job. The reality is those jobs they're very scarce.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. I used to teach at University of Texas, and some of these kids were absolutely brilliant, just unbelievable junior talent. We do like capture the flags and stuff, and how capable some of these people were was just extremely impressive. And it was just demoralizing to watch them step out of the classroom and then try to go find a job. And many of them would reach out to me and say, I've interviewed 30, 40 times.
Yeah, it's painful.
And it is. I mean, of course, it was hard for me seeing from the instructor perspective, but I'm sure just exponentially harder for them when they've invested everything, their time, their resources, their interests into this, and just not being able to find a foot in the door.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad.
It is.
It really is.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Any final words, guys?
Yeah. For those of you that are still looking for a tech skill to go chase after, start digging into AI now, because you want to be those overseers and those babysitters for those jobs that are out there. And, it's a land grab, as Jason likes to say, in the world of AI. Everything right now is a land grab, whether it be for AI related applications that you can develop, whether it be for AI businesses getting started, whether it be for investors looking to invest into future projects or future companies that are embracing this new world. It's a land grab. And if you're out there, and this goes for all of us too, if we're not honing in on our own AI skills, at least to some degree, we're leaving meat on the bone. So people listening that are wondering, what do I do now? How do I keep challenging myself? What do I do to take my skill set to the next level? There's not even a question what you should be doing. Yep. Dive in, learn this stuff, and it's not too late. It's still the bleeding edge. So get in there and learn. Figure out what you can specialize in. You'll figure that out as you go. Believe me. Wherever your skill sets are, there's a place in AI for you. I assure you. Just get in now. Now's the time.
Yeah, there's another industry leader named Ted Harrington who wrote Hacked or Hackable. And one of the phrases that he consistently uses is think like a hacker. And I think in this case in particular, that is kind of the feedback that I consistently gave to my students was just, you just have to be persistent. Like, just don't give up. And I know how demoralizing and how challenging that can be. And then the one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is that imposter syndrome of just wondering, am I really capable for the job that I'm trying to step into? And I think just even if you have to manufacturing that self-confidence to believe in yourself, to know that what you offer is something that's a uniquely different perspective. And the truth is that everybody has a uniquely different perspective, and there is value in that. So I like the idea of leaving this on a positive note. And I think that there's still opportunities out there while we are seeing increased layoffs. I think that we still need people in this industry. I think that this
absolutely
is hurting
absolutely
for good talent. So
100% agree.
And guys, we've brought some great information tonight. It was a lot of fun to cut through some of these topics, share our thoughts, and kind of reveal the state of where some of this technology is in terms of cybersecurity. We invite you all to continue to follow us We are the Cyber Distortion Podcast, Barcode Security, and Cyber Cognition, where we collectively are part of the Cyber Circus Network. So follow us, continuing to spread the word, subscribe to our podcast, get the word out, and let's all do our part to try to continue to educate as many people as we can.
All right. That's it. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for joining.